The sun shone brightly over Arlington National Cemetery that afternoon. Visitors strolled slowly along the paths, some pausing at memorials, others taking quiet photographs. The air was filled with a mixture of reverence and curiosity. Children held their parents' hands tightly, while tourists whispered to each other, reading the inscriptions on the gravestones. Among them, a small group had gathered near the tomb of the unknown soldier, listening to an activist speak passionately about veterans' issues. His voice carried over the plaza, firm but calm, as he shared stories about soldiers who had served their country and the struggles many faced after returning home. People stopped to listen, some nodding in agreement, others simply curious. The activist did not notice the man approaching from the side. He moved through the crowd quickly, a tense look on his face, his hand reaching inside his coat. For a moment, no one realized the danger he carried. Suddenly, the man pulled out a gun and pointed it directly at the activist. The plaza froze. Screams erupted immediately, and people scattered in all directions, their faces filled with shock and fear. Parents grabbed their children, tourists ducked behind statues, and some simply froze in place, unsure of what to do. The air felt heavy, charged with panic. The sound of the gun glinting in the sunlight made hearts pound in every chest nearby. Amid the chaos, a figure stood perfectly still. A tomb guard, dressed in the formal uniform of the guard, stepped forward. His posture was precise, almost statuesque. He did not raise his hands or scream, and he did not run. Instead, he carefully measured each step, keeping his eyes locked on the armed man. His calm, disciplined presence seemed to pull the attention of the crowd away from panic and toward him. People instinctively slowed, their fear mingled with curiosity. He moved with purpose but without haste, as if the weight of his training carried him through each motion. The suspect's movements became erratic. He shouted threats at the activist, waving the gun, trying to frighten anyone who dared to come near. But the tomb guard remained steady. His eyes never left the man. His hands were relaxed at his sides, but every muscle was ready. There was no hesitation, no fear in his stance. The guard's calm energy acted like a magnet, drawing attention away from the activist and subtly warning the suspect that any reckless action would not be tolerated. Nearby, visitors whispered among themselves. "Who is that?" one woman asked, her voice trembling. "Why is he not running?" A man behind her shook his head. "I don't know, but he's keeping the situation from getting worse." The plaza, which had erupted in chaos just moments before, now seemed suspended in time. Every eye was on the guard. Even the activist, who had been frozen in fear, felt a strange sense of relief seeing the calm figure approach. The tomb guard subtly shifted his weight, angling his body slightly while keeping the suspect in view. He had learned through countless hours of training to remain in control, even when everything around him spiraled into uncertainty. The movements of the suspect were unpredictable, but the guard's focus never wavered. He knew that rushing forward recklessly could make the situation worse, and waiting too long could be just as dangerous. Each step was deliberate, every motion calculated to maintain a balance between safety and authority. The crowd began to notice something remarkable. While everyone else had reacted in fear, the tomb guard's presence seemed to create a small bubble of order in the chaos. People instinctively gave him space, forming a subtle path between him and the armed man. It was as if the plaza itself had recognized his authority. The guard's calm, silent command over the situation reminded everyone why he was trained to serve and protect. He did not shout. He did not point. Yet his presence alone was enough to change the energy in the plaza. Meanwhile, the suspect's anger began to show cracks. His hand trembled slightly as he waved the gun. He shouted more, but the guard did not flinch. Every instinct of the armed man screamed for chaos, for panic, for control, but the guard's unwavering calm made him hesitate. Seconds stretched into what felt like minutes. Every bystander watched with bated breath, unsure whether the situation would escalate or be diffused. The activist, realizing he had a protector, felt a surge of hope. He slowly began to step back, giving space to the tomb guard. Other bystanders followed suit, moving carefully but steadily away from danger. The plaza, once alive with fear and screams, became a stage of tense anticipation. The sunlight reflected off the marble around them, glinting off the guard's polished uniform, and somehow adding to the feeling that he was a pillar of safety amid the panic. Even the man with the gun seemed momentarily frozen. He did not expect the unwavering calm, the steady gaze, and the absolute control of the tomb guard. His threats lost some of their power because the guard's eyes held a quiet command. Without raising his voice, without moving recklessly, the guard had communicated one simple message. Stop. Think. Do not act recklessly. It was a lesson in presence and authority, one that would be remembered by everyone who witnessed it. Around the plaza, whispers turned into murmurs. Visitors began pointing discreetly, saying things like, "Look at him. He's not afraid." Cameras captured the moment, immortalizing the still figure facing down danger. Every step, every breath was careful, measured, and deliberate. The crowd began to regain some composure, following the guard's silent lead. Even the activist, though still shaken, found a thread of courage in the guard's presence. And so, the plaza stood frozen in a delicate balance of fear and control, with the tomb guard as the calm center. He was not a hero seeking attention. He was a professional doing his duty, but his quiet courage in the face of immediate danger made every onlooker feel something powerful. That bravery is not always loud, and sometimes the mere act of standing firm can change the course of events. The seconds after the initial shock felt endless. The armed man's eyes darted around the plaza, searching for reactions, for fear, for someone to back down first. But the tomb guard remained steady, unwavering, as if he were part of the marble itself. Every move of the guard was precise and deliberate. He did not speak loudly or make sudden gestures. Instead, he created a quiet kind of authority that seemed to slow time. People around them instinctively gave him more space, forming a small circle of order around him and the activist. The chaos in the plaza was still present, but it was now held at a careful distance by the guard's presence. The armed man took a step forward, his voice rising as he shouted threats. He wanted to provoke fear, to make people scatter more, to feel control over the situation. But the guard's calm, measured stance seemed to resist that influence. He did not flinch or look away. His eyes were locked on the suspect, unbroken, steady. With each passing moment, it became clear to the armed man that this was not an ordinary crowd he faced. This was someone trained, someone disciplined, someone who could see every possible move and react correctly. The activist, still frozen from shock, began to notice small signs of control returning. He saw how the guard subtly shifted his weight, keeping a careful distance while signaling with his eyes and posture to law enforcement officers who were now rushing toward the plaza. The guard's movements were silent instructions, guiding the officers to the exact location of the threat without making a sound. Each step was a part of a dance he had practiced countless times in drills, but now it had real stakes. The plaza seemed to hold its collective breath as everyone watched this quiet, tense standoff unfold. The armed man grew more frustrated. His movements became sharper, less controlled. He waved the gun, but the guard remained composed. Every bystander could see the difference between panic and discipline. Some whispered to each other in awe, pointing out how calmly the guard managed the situation. "Look at him," one said. "He's not afraid at all. He's just standing there." Others nodded, feeling a strange sense of reassurance despite the danger. It was unusual to see someone so calm when everyone else was panicking, but that calmness became a beacon of hope. Suddenly, the guard noticed the suspect's weight shift slightly. It was a subtle movement, almost invisible, but the guard's training allowed him to read it perfectly. He recognized the signs of hesitation, the small cracks in confidence that occur when someone realizes they are no longer fully in control. Without any sudden movements, the guard took a very small step to the side, adjusting his position while keeping the suspect in his line of sight. It was enough to subtly influence the suspect's perception of the situation, showing that the guard was ready to act if necessary, but was giving him the chance to back down peacefully. The crowd continued to watch in tense silence. Cameras and phones recorded every moment, but people were too focused on the unfolding drama to worry about capturing it. The plaza was alive with anticipation. Tourists who had come to see monuments now found themselves witnessing a real-life lesson in courage and discipline. Children hid behind their parents, peeking out to see what would happen next while adults held their breath, hoping the situation would resolve without harm. Meanwhile, the activist cautiously took a step back, creating more distance between himself and the suspect. The guard's eyes briefly flicked to him, a silent acknowledgement that he was safe for the moment. The activist could feel a sense of calm washing over him. knowing that someone trained and focused was managing the situation. The crowd's fear was beginning to lessen, replaced with admiration for the guard's bravery. People realized that the outcome of the confrontation depended on his steady presence and careful decision-making. The armed man's frustration reached a peak. He raised his voice, shaking the gun slightly, but the guard's presence remained unshaken. He subtly shifted again, moving into a position that both maintained distance and guided the suspect toward a more contained area where law enforcement officers could approach safely. Every action of the guard was deliberate, designed to minimize risk while controlling the suspect's movements without escalating the situation. It was a balancing act that required not only courage but also calm judgment under pressure. Within moments, the officers reached the guard's position. The guard signaled to them with a subtle tilt of his head, guiding them to the suspect without breaking the tense standoff. The officers carefully approached, their eyes fixed on the armed man, ready to intervene. The guard maintained his position, keeping the suspect focused on him rather than reacting impulsively. The armed man's attention was completely on the guard, who held firm, calm, and unflinching. The seconds stretched on, each one loaded with tension, until the officers were close enough to take control safely. Then, in a coordinated and professional manner, the officers disarmed the man and secured the weapon. The guard did not rush to intervene physically, because his role had been to stabilize the situation until trained authorities could act. Thanks to his discipline and courage, the incident was resolved without anyone being harmed. The crowd slowly exhaled, relief washing over everyone. The plaza, which had been filled with fear just minutes before, now hummed with quiet conversations and expressions of gratitude for the guard's bravery. The activist approached the guard, still shaken but deeply grateful. He thanked him sincerely, acknowledging that the calm, precise actions had saved not just his life but potentially the lives of others nearby. The guard nodded respectfully, returning to his formal posture. He did not seek recognition or praise. His duty was to protect and serve, and that was enough. Around them, bystanders whispered in admiration, recounting the moments when the guard had remained completely composed, even as danger loomed. As the plaza slowly returned to normal, the lessons of the encounter became clear. The situation had been tense, dangerous, and unpredictable. Yet the tomb guard's courage, training, and calm presence had ensured that no one was hurt. People began to realize that heroism does not always roar. It often appears in quiet, measured acts of bravery. The guard's actions reminded everyone that even in moments of fear and chaos, discipline and calm thinking can prevent disaster. By the time the last of the officers secured the area and the armed man was taken away, the crowd had shifted from panic to admiration. Visitors discussed the incident in hushed tones, sharing what they had seen with friends and family. The activist, now safe, reflected on how one person's steady presence had changed the course of events entirely. The plaza, once frozen in fear, was now a place of reflection on courage and duty. Even after the immediate danger had passed, the memory of the guard's actions lingered. People would later describe how he had frozen the plaza, not through force but through calm, unwavering authority. His presence had prevented panic from escalating and had guided trained officers to act safely and efficiently. The crowd dispersed slowly, each person carrying with them the impression of a hero whose courage was quiet, disciplined, and unwavering. After the armed man had been taken away by law enforcement, the plaza slowly began to settle. Visitors who had moments ago been frozen with fear now exhaled, releasing the tension that had gripped them. Some shook with adrenaline, others whispered prayers of thanks. The activist, still trembling slightly, looked at the tomb guard with deep gratitude. He realized that without the guard's calm presence, the outcome might have been very different. The plaza had witnessed a rare display of courage, not loud or dramatic, but quiet, steady, and precise. The tomb guard returned to his formal stance, resuming his duties as if nothing had happened. His movements were careful, deliberate, and flawless. Even after the dangerous moment, he did not seek recognition. He understood that his role was not to be noticed, but to serve, to protect, and to remain disciplined no matter what unfolded. Visitors observed him from a distance, some snapping photos, others simply staring in awe. Many whispered to their companions, recounting how the guard had handled the crisis with unmatched poise. The plaza, now calm, was alive with admiration. News crews began arriving to document the incident. Reporters interviewed witnesses, capturing stories of the brief but intense moment when fear had filled the plaza. Everyone mentioned the guard, the one who had frozen the plaza, commanding attention and respect without raising his voice or moving recklessly. The activist shared his gratitude publicly, emphasizing that the guard's actions had prevented panic from turning into tragedy. The story quickly spread, highlighting the importance of training, discipline, and courage in moments of unexpected danger. As the day wore on, the guard continued his post, standing silently but alert. His calm composure served as a reminder to everyone present that true bravery often appears quietly. Families who had witnessed the event walked slowly through the plaza, reflecting on the courage they had seen. Children asked their parents questions about the guard and his actions, eager to understand how someone could remain so calm in such a frightening situation. Parents explained that training, focus, and dedication allow some people to face danger without panic. The lesson resonated deeply, leaving an impression that would stay with many for years. The activist took a moment to speak with the guard privately, expressing his sincere thanks. He acknowledged that the guard's presence had saved lives, not just his own but those of the bystanders around him. The guard nodded humbly, explaining that he had only done what he had been trained to do. There was no ego in his words, only a sense of duty and responsibility. The activist felt a mix of relief and respect, realizing that heroism can take many forms, sometimes quiet, measured, and unseen by the world. Over the next few days, the incident became a topic of national conversation. Articles, news segments, and social media posts highlighted the guard's bravery. People across the country shared stories of the moment when a trained, disciplined individual prevented potential harm without escalating the situation. Experts discussed how training, composure, and situational awareness are vital in moments of crisis. Many remarked that the guard's actions were a textbook example of courage under pressure. The Arlington National Cemetery staff took the opportunity to review safety procedures and provide additional guidance for handling unexpected incidents. While the incident had ended without injury, it served as a reminder that vigilance and preparation are always necessary. The guard's calm response became a case study for training new recruits, demonstrating how discipline, presence of mind, and patience can prevent chaos from turning into tragedy. Visitors who returned to the plaza in the days following the incident often paused near the tomb of the unknown soldier, reflecting on what had happened. Some knelt quietly, paying their respects not just to the soldiers but also to the human courage they had witnessed. The guard continued his duties, moving with the same precision and attention to detail, embodying the values of service, honor, and courage. People who had been present that day often recounted the story to friends and family, emphasizing the remarkable calm of the guard amid chaos. The activist continued his work, now more determined to raise awareness about veterans' issues. The experience had strengthened his resolve, but he also carried a lasting lesson about the impact of disciplined courage. He often recounted the event in speeches, highlighting how the guard's actions had protected lives and prevented panic. The story inspired others to consider how calm, thoughtful action can make a difference in moments of crisis. Even weeks later, the memory of that afternoon remained vivid for those who had been there. Visitors reflected on how one person's calm, steady presence could change the outcome of a potentially dangerous situation. Children who had witnessed it learned an early lesson about courage, discipline, and responsibility. Adults were reminded that heroism often comes in unexpected forms, and that preparation, focus, and calm decision-making can prevent disaster. The guard himself continued his work quietly, without seeking fame or recognition. His bravery had been witnessed by hundreds, yet he remained humble, embodying the ideals he had sworn to uphold. The incident became part of the legacy of Arlington National Cemetery, a story passed down to visitors, new guards, and future generations. It reminded everyone that courage is not always loud or dramatic. It can be quiet, steady, and disciplined, capable of freezing a plaza, protecting lives, and inspiring countless others. As the sun set over the cemetery, casting long shadows across the marble paths, the plaza returned to its peaceful rhythm. Visitors walked slowly, reflecting on the events of the day, carrying with them a renewed appreciation for courage, discipline, and the quiet heroes who walk among us. The tomb guard remained vigilant, a living reminder that calm, focused bravery can make all the difference, even in moments that seem impossible to control.